Hello,
Hello.
everyone.
Yo.
Hello.
Oh, let's see. There's Foy.
How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing good here.
Excellent.
Doing good.
Trying to switch my audio over, darn it.
The tech guy, Mike, you're not allowed to have technical difficulties.
Well, I'm on the computer junk. I wanted to get onto the Bluetooth so my wife, I don't disturb her, but come on, add device. Add
John, how are you?
Good. How's it going?
Very good, very good. So I'll butcher his name, but I'm sure he doesn't pronounce it Henrik, but that's how it's spelled to me with my simple Dave Foy name. So I'd hoping his alarm went off this morning because it's about 3 a.m. in Finland when he's going to be here with us.
I'm here, Dave.
Oh, he's here. How bad did I butcher your name?
Yeah, you didn't butcher it. It's not. It's Henrik. So yeah.
Oh, I was kind of close. All right.
Hey, gentlemen, how you doing? This is Brian Wilkinson.
Hey, Brian. Glad to have you here.
Excited to be there.
Excellent.
Paul Meyer, Connecticut.
Paul, hello, sir.
Hey, Paul.
All right, so I'll start us off in the usual way. Looking for somebody that had a win, big win, small win, whatever, through the past couple weeks. So it's actually been 3 weeks since the last time we met. Anybody's got a win they want to throw out there? Let's give a start with that. How about
On a personal side, a business side, or what are you talking?
whatever you want to do? I mean, obviously this is the Fixed Ops Mastermind, but if you got hair growing, Paul, we want to know.
That's my wife laughing in the background. All right. So my big win, which I think you saw in the announcement yesterday, is that I'm going to be starting up the automotive division of Synergy 3.
Awesome.
It's very exciting. Nice.
Awesome. I did see that. It was exciting information. Very happy for you on that.
Thank you. Thank you. So here we grow again.
There you go. All right. Well, if nobody else has a win they want to toss out there, I'm going to try my technical side here. I have to be able to turn over enter privileges so that you can. Michael, how are you, buddy? Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
All right. Mike, help me out. How do I turn over presenter privileges to
Presenter or?
Well, so that he can he's got a whole presentation to be able to put up.
Okay, so make co-host. I think it's the right. Go down to your more. No, I'm sorry. It's up in participants.
In participants,
I believe. You can make someone a co-host. You go to the participants.
I have to actually select him.
I believe, and then make co-host. Can't think if I'm in the right place. It may be the 3 dots too.
I gotta find you. Henrik, what is your which number is yours? Your name's not coming up.
Okay. We try if I just try to share immediately.
Oh, there we go. You are in there, sir.
If but I'm getting some kind of static from.
I think that's from somebody's mic is picking up a lot of static. Okay. Got the noise.
Try the mute all button there, David.
All right, so I just muted everybody. Henrik, you'll have to unmute yourself to be able to speak through there.
All right, very good. Thank you. So Dave, real quick question. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So you see the presentation. Should we get started then?
Yes, absolutely. So so everybody knows, this is Henrik joining us from Finland, where it is 3 a.m., I believe.
That's factually very true. So
We are very grateful to get you out of bed this early and get you to come here and provide us this information. We're going to be going through a lot of stuff on data and us using data more effectively to run our departments. So everybody right now is muted. Anybody that does have something to say, you'll have to unmute yourself to speak up. But there was a lot of noise coming through somebody's mic there. So the floor is yours, sir.
well, thank you very much. So yeah, let's have an interactive session and try to get a good conversation going. So the idea would not be for me to sort of pitch for 1 hour. Instead, let's have a discussion about data. And so I wrote the topic knowledge management in fixed ops. So I thought let's go broad, because data is one thing, knowledge management is another. So that's a sort of a very broad topic. It covers everything from business intelligence to master data management and so on. So we're going sort of broad, and what I'm trying to achieve here is to paint out a picture of what kinds of things you should be thinking about in the service department in terms of gathering data and managing that data, not just for you and your job, but for the department as a whole, because and this is true for a lot of businesses. I mean, people change jobs and move on. How do you keep that knowledge in the organization? And another thing that's sort of also important is that you know your processes, you know how your business works. Your competitor doesn't know that, Google doesn't know that, Facebook doesn't know that. It's up to you to gather the data from your processes and to use that data for lofty goals such as competitive advantage, and that's something that we'll probably touch on. So let's get started.
Awesome.
Let's see if I can just switch the slide here. There we go. So a bit about me. So I'm from Finland, yes, and I have a company called Fat Tails. But the reason I'm talking to you today is because I also have a concept within the Fat Tails umbrella, which is called examplecar.com. And the idea behind that is to show how you can use data within automotive, the automotive space, starting from the service department. So my background is primarily as a systems integrator, and what that means is that I build integrations between different systems, and primarily for analytics and data warehousing. You may also see me on LinkedIn sometimes posting about forestry equipment. That's because I'm also sort of embroiled in marketing for a forestry equipment manufacturer here in Finland. So our forest. All right, let's move along. What are the broad applications of knowledge management in fixed operations? Well, I sort of split them in two broad categories, and we'll talk about one of them today because, frankly, I don't think we'll have time to discuss both of them. So service management is all of the operations that you have going on. So all of your processes and sub-process that you use to build and have a well-performing service department, all of that data goes into the service management part or service management side of things to have smooth operations and manage the day-to-day. So those things get lumped into that bucket. And then the other bucket, which I hope we'll discuss at some point, is data or knowledge management for services marketing. So you have a lot of data in the fixed ops side of the business that is repeating. It's about the customer, and more importantly, it's about the customer behavior. And this is critical as it relates to your processes. So customer data relating to your processes is something that you have access to in the service department. Nobody else has access to that. And that's something to keep in mind. So Google doesn't have access to it. Facebook doesn't have access to it. Your competitors don't have access to it. You have access to it. And you can impact things, processes, and so on that generate that data. So when we talk about that some other time, that's a very important point to make. So let's move along. And service management in fixed operations, it's a broad concept also. So when we think about all of the things, all of the processes and the people and the practices that you have in the service department, there are a lot of them, and there are a lot of variables. Some of them get recorded in the DMS, some of them get recorded somewhere else, some other systems. But you can have data on employees and how they're performing, service efficiency, things like effective labor rates and so on, customer development, service sales, of course, and then stuff on service quality that you need to manage the service department. And then, of course, other stuff like appointments and so on. So all of these things should be recorded, and they should be organized so that you can effectively use them and have access to them. So it shouldn't be a sort of a thing where you only manage by your intuition or by your experience. You should actually start to sort of really accrue this data and organize it in a way that you can access it and show it and lead on the data. And
yeah,
so
and that was something that that we had kind of touched on in New York, right? Was that we have all this data available to us that we really don't use properly. And I think some of the bubbles that you have out there, the customer development and employee retention, and service efficiency and things, there's certain portions of that we look at. but I don't think we're effectively using the massive amount of data that we generate on a daily basis to really run our business year after year after year, as opposed to simply thinking that Tuesdays are busy, as opposed to actually having the data to show us whether Tuesdays are really busy or not, or if it seems that way, or if there's something else that's affecting it that we're not seeing. And I think that's where being able to use some more of this information would really be helpful to us.
Yeah, and I agree, and it all starts with your business requirements and what you're putting your focus on. So there are a lot of small balls around here flying around a big service management concept, and those are things that I haven't listed here that you will have. And then things that you don't record in your systems, like for instance your DMS. Just because you don't have a system for them doesn't mean that they're not important, that you shouldn't try to record stuff relating to goals and so on. So even though you're only keeping them in an Excel sheet, for instance, that stuff you should also try to integrate that into your sort of knowledge management and your data sort of framework to see how it fits.
Yep.
So that's also important. So
Henrik, can you switch to a slideshow view? Can you still?
Sure.
If I can jump in here, part of the problem with a lot of guys using Excel to map some of their data is that because there is no integration, it gets to be kind of hard to manage. The typical day consists of putting out fires, and if you've got all these ancillary reports that you've got to look at, sometimes that you get a little bit lost in what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's also very true. So the point is not sort of to have 400 reports and 10,000 KPIs. You need to look at what you're really trying to accomplish, and then define the KPIs and the metrics off of that. So well, there are established metrics and KPIs within service, and those are great as a starting point. But also in terms of managing your day-to-day, you shouldn't be spending too much time building a report over and over and over again when you can employ, let's say, a local systems integrator or a young data scientist off of school to help you with that kind of stuff. That's what they're for. So I mean, yeah, that's one point also. You shouldn't be trying to spend too much time doing rote data work. So really think about how you can automate the integration of all those data points and start from the important stuff and the low-hanging fruit so that you can justify it. So let's say the dealer principal or the owner of the shop or the general manager. So
a lot of robust reporting comes right out of your DMS, so there shouldn't be the need to add a lot of extra reporting.
It would be nice though that with all the reports that we do have, for them to be more localized because I know there's many of the reports, you know, there's a little nugget here that I want, or there's a little nugget there, but it'd be nice to build my own and say, this is what I want to see. In addition to these on the screen, one that just seems to be lacking in the DMS is a customer retention report, you know, being able to see how many times these customers are visiting. So I think customer retention is one that can be added as well.
What DMS are you guys using at your store?
I'm on UCS.
Because I know that a lot of DMS out there, CDK for one, and I believe Reynolds has the same capabilities, where if you work with your rep, you can get reports custom tailored view them the way you need to view them. And you can have that set up to automatically send you on a daily basis or weekly, however you want to manage that. So now you're more managing by exception because you've got everything laid out the way you want it.
Sure.
And when things are out of the range, that's when you know you need to focus your attention on it.
Right.
Yeah, I think, Paul, some of what we're looking at as far as this reporting is trying to get to be able to utilize the historical data that we have available. I mean, I know that I always say the day after Christmas is crazy. Everybody's on staff that day because it's always busy. But I could probably go back through and look at if I had a report like this rather than compiling, 10 December 26th out of my DMS. If we had a thing like this that was tracking all of these things every day and putting it in a usable format for us, I think that's what we're trying to kind of get to, where it's a reporting system that we can use effectively to really see actual trends in the business over time.
Yeah, and I think those are both really good points. And the goal, whether you want to work with a DMS rep or a more of an independent integrator, is you want to have your analytics without restrictions, and that's for reporting also. But in terms of what John was touching on, the customer retention, you don't want to leave a report just lying on your sort of desk. You want to have that data. You might want to feed it into a CRM or a marketing automation platform where you have set up sort of a customer model where you communicate and have marketing interventions at certain points during the customer lifetime or life cycle. So not only using that for the standard reporting, but actually feeding it into other systems based on the intelligence that you're taking out.
Henrik,
So
can I
that's
pop
an
a
important point also.
Can I pop a question at you?
Sure.
So a lot of the data that we're talking about is results data, and I'm trying to push more and more into the realm of SPC, or statistical process control. So I've been out of dealers for about a year. I retired and trying to do this online stuff. I'm wondering what's out there now in terms of data that measures process. For instance, I know there were MPI reports that were available, and that sort of thing. Is there anything else coming along that tells managers whether people are doing what they're supposed to do besides the results?
Okay, does anyone have a view or opinion on that? I can start off by saying that the data that I look at and that I integrate is at the sort of the finest level of detail. So it's data on open repair orders and stuff like that. So that builds up to the report at the summary level. You get the finest grain each time, and so when you build, like, let's say, a metric that shows on the report, you can actually then drill down to see where that data is coming from. And regarding statistical process control, I haven't built those sorts of things into them, but basically, if you do have a data architecture set up, you can run programs. Like, there's a program that's open sourced and used very widely. It's called R. It's just a letter, but there you have libraries and packages for things like statistical process control, or you can use Excel. So there are lots of options available to you at that point. I hope that answers your question somewhat, Michael. But
yeah, I just want to
good help. Thanks.
Just real quick to Michael's point is I think there's something that I learned a while back, and I'm speaking kind of from a manufacturer's point of view guy at this point in my career, leading indicators versus lagging indicators. And most of the data that we're talking about is lagging indicators versus what Michael's talking about is a leading indicator. That is, that if we can track that, it's more predictive of what the results will be by looking at behaviors. And I think that both are important. So I just wanted to add that.
That's a very good point. Yeah, yeah. And you shouldn't be locked down in what your DMS is generating at the moment. You should also look to sort of keep your own logs of things that are important. So just because you don't have some data, you should always strive to sort of, if it's important to you and if it's a business requirement, start logging it manually if need be, and then add it to your sort of data architecture. Can you still see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna move along here because I think there's some good discussion still to be had. Let's see here. So when we think about the real processes that are happening in the dealership, and this is something that we've talked about, is you generate a lot of valuable data day in, day out. So you need to sort of track that into your own data hub that you can use, and that's sort of the flip side of all of this. And now I'm sort of hesitant to show you the next slide because it may be a bit messy and it may be a bit involved, but once you start modeling things, let's just see. If I can move those grid lines. So when faced with a data sort of structure or some sort of system, what you usually start to do in these types of projects is you build a conceptual data model. So you talk to the business, and this is from a systems integration point of view. You talk to the system, you talk to the business owners, and you figure out what are the important concepts that they're using, which are the processes, and then you start to map out different kinds of concepts and how they relate to each other. So this is a sort of and I hope we can have some discussion here. This is a simple sort of it's not a process description as such, but these are some of the main things that you would have in a service process. So you have the customer acquisition or the appointment setting. Then you have an inspection or some type of write-up with the service advisor. Then the car gets diagnosed and you work with parts, and then the service work gets done, and so on. And then you have a lot of detail going on in the background, like you give an estimate to the customer might decline some work and so on. And then in the service work, you have details on hours sold and actual hours, and stuff like that. And then you have really fine-grained data on the line and so on. And those are in data warehousing jargon and knowledge management jargon, those are called facts, and they sort of house the measures at different points in your processes, and you sort of map those out there. But the interesting thing is then that you also have this thing called a dimension, and reporting in reporting speak, those are usually called filters. So you have different ways of looking at your process and slicing and dicing it and seeing where the points of interest are. One of the more important dimensions is the time, or you have time like time of day and so on. You can have that, but the one we were talking about with day was the date dimension. So this is a usually in a data warehouse, you pre-calculate a date dimension. And in simple terms, what this, you can think of it as a table with columns where you have the date, you have different kinds of flags, like is it the first Monday of the month? Is it Super Bowl? Is it a holiday? Which holiday is it? And so on. So you have rows of dates with all of this rich contextual information. And you can also add information that's important to your service department or dealership, certain marketing events and so on, that you can then use in your reporting and knowledge management. So that's just an important point of view. And from the slides, you can see that there's a lot going on. It's quite busy. So there are lines drawn to all of the sub processes and so on. So you can filter and slice and dice your measures based on all of these dimensions. So then when we go down on, I'm looking at the left side of the slide. If we look at employees, you have these roles for different types. So you have a booker or someone who books the appointment. That might be tracked separately. Then you have the advisor that does the inspection and sells the service. Then of course you have the tech, and you may also have service managers and so on. So that's an important dimension for sure.
Yeah, and Henry, if I can jump in for 1 second, this in my convoluted head was kind of where I was thinking was the meat of a lot of this when I started to think about this after we spoke in New York, was the fact that that we could have the ability to break this data up. We have the DMS where we can get some great information on, you know, which tech filled out multi-points, you know, what percentage of the time and how many recommendations per RO and things. But it would be really great to be able to go even deeper on that and find out, you know, that on Mondays and Tuesdays, he's really great about doing multi-points, but on Wednesdays, maybe he's not so good. And Wednesday happens to be the night after his bowling league. You know, whatever it is, you know, it may be something else, but to be able to actually see that kind of depth in the information that we have to really figure out what times of day things are worse for us or better for us. Like you said, the dates where we can break it up, you know, and know which ones were holidays, which ones were following Super Bowl wins, which ones were following, you know, the All-Star game in baseball, whatever it is, and try to really understand our business at a much deeper, I think you used the word granular, a much more granular level that we really haven't gotten into. I always use the example up here in the Northeast is Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know how far around the country they are, but you can go into any Dunkin' Donuts anywhere up here at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and there's very little left for donuts or bagels. And you can go in there in the morning, go in there on a Monday, there might be 100 pumpernickel bagels, and on Tuesday morning there's 2 pumpernickel bagels. And that's not by chance. That's because they're using the data like we have, except they're actually using it to know that Monday mornings a lot of people order pumpernickel, Tuesday mornings people don't. And I think we missed the boat on a lot of the information that we have available to us that could really, it might take a while to get through, but at the end of the day would help our businesses greatly.
There are some systems out there that do a lot of these things that we're discussing. Not every, but I would say it's the minority of dealerships that have them, and then of course the percentage of those dealerships that actually use them. But
yeah, absolutely.
Would you say that in terms of
yeah, but I'm just a roommate.
You're just a roommate?
Yeah. Okay.
Would you say that the parts department does this sort of demand forecasting for parts? Is that somewhere, or is that a place in the dealership where you could sort of learn and ask, because
The OEMs do a good bit of that. That was a big a big revolution, what, 10 years ago, when they started asking stores to parts departments to go wide instead of deep, and let us do your ordering for you. So the answer, Henrik, is yeah, but I think it's mostly done by the OEMs.
Right.
Yeah.
The DMSs, a lot of them keep track of also. They look at usage. Hey, David, think of your mic that's positive.
David Miller.
Yeah. Nope, apparently not.
Might be able. It's turning green, so.
But as I was saying, so it's a lot of DMS will track, your parts usage, seasonality, things like that, so that when the ordering happens, you're sure to get what you need at the time. But you've got to have some checks in place too to make sure that that's all going properly.
Yeah, from the OEM side, obviously they're going to be more focused on what's going in and out of their parts department more than they're ever concerned about our service department. So, I don't necessarily know that anywhere in the near future you're going to see this kind of detailed system come out from an OEM to help us. It's going to be something that we either have to build ourselves or find out how to kidnap Henrik and take him out of Finland and bring him here.
You're just being rude, David.
You don't need to kidnap me. I'm coming to LA next week, and I work over the network, so I have sort of contracts in the US that I can facilitate. But this is a really interesting discussion. And one of the softwares or the platforms that I was mentioning, which is free, is R, where you have packages for forecasting. Now, this is not easy, because if you're trying to forecast demand for, let's say, footfall or appointments in the service department, there will probably be a lot of variability week to week and day to day. So it's tough to pin it down, but I'm going to show an example. I might actually, let me just show the example in this context so that you can sort of see what we're talking about. And I have this material. I'll send it over to all of the participants. I have a link specifically to a forecasting text that is also free. It's open source, and you can go into these topics if they're of interest to you and see what it's all about. And that's sort of one approach to forecasting demand and the concept of shop loading in this sense. So have a look at that link if you're interested. And just as a side note, while I remember, there is another approach to forecasting demand, and that's counting customer transactions and trying to forecast, let's say, by certain labor op codes or op codes for the type of service that's regular in nature, how many customers you're going to be having in, let's say, next week, and cumulatively, and so on. So that's another approach, but that's a topic that's better with the services marketing concept. So are you able to see a sort of a dashboard here on the screen?
Yep.
And I'll share this dashboard with you. You can play around with it. So it's unfortunately, I don't have a lot of data. This is actually a validation set from CDK. So this data is kind of short. It's kind of messy. it's only used to validate. So they've hacked it a bit before I got to it, but I did find a bit of structure in the data. So if you look on the right lower hand side, you have weekly, this is service sales. So, I mean, we can have a discussion about what the measure should be. You have a lot of options, of course, because in the DMS, you have plenty of different metrics or measures to sort of reflect demand. But would you guys say that there's usually some seasonality to service sales?
Absolutely.
So, and would you say that those are during spring?
I would say there's a bunch of different times of year when we have not necessarily just seasonality, but definitely fluctuations in the business.
And this is somewhere where sort of having access to data in a structured way and having a program work on that data where you have multiple years of data, because what the algorithms are designed to do is they're designed to extract structure from the time series in this example. So from the text that I'll link you to, there's a technique called time series decomposition, where you have a time series and then the algorithm sort of, it breaks out different components of the time series, and one component might be seasonality. And let's say you're working for the Department of Labor in the US or something like that, and you're looking at job statistics. One use case for breaking out seasonality is to see whether the unemployment rate is actually going up or down, and you want to get seasonality out because let's say people are coming off college and so on, and you want to get those effects out. And then also extracting the trends, is it going up or down in the long term once you've removed seasonality and so on. So those are some of the packages that if you have the know-how, you can start looking at your data. And from this example, this is a dashboarding software from Microsoft. You may have heard of it. It's called Power BI. You basically have the option to flick a switch, and then the dotted line is actually a forecast, and the gray areas is a 90% confidence interval where you would expect service sales to fall in, or sold service hours to fall into that with a 90% confidence. I wouldn't necessarily use that option. It's just to illustrate what sorts of things you can do. So that's sort of a forward-looking measure and a forecast. And of course, it's because it's in the future. It's relevant to you as a service director or as a service leader, because you'd want to know, right, how much sales you're doing. But on the right-hand side or on the left-hand side, I'm sorry, it's a bit early in the morning here. I'll have to apologize. But on the left-hand side, you'll see a calendar view of the data. And this is something that you can use. There are plenty of plugins for this quite inexpensive software. So this is a calendar. It's called a visual, where you can see sort of hotspots in the data. And if you'd have more of this, you can see the whole year. You can choose to look at different years also to see like the Tuesdays and any sort of congestion that you have year in, year out, or week in, week out, and to see that kind of thing. And of course, once you get started, you'll add more dimensions. So on the top left-hand side, I've added some of the flags that are available. Let's say in the DMS, you have whether or not it's a customer pay service. Is it from an appointment, or is it a sort of a walk-in? is the customer a waiter and so on. So it's depending on how you flick different switches, planned service will look different, and than people just coming into the service department. You'll know this best, but it's worth investigating the data to see where that structure is.
Henrik, if I could ask a question, and this is coming from Gene, that how have you seen your clients use goals to customize the reporting? If you have a couple of examples just to show the different ways that some of your clients use this.
So yeah, I sort of forgot to tell you in the beginning. So my background is as a consultant, software consultant. I've obviously worked with a lot of different industries, but in my sort of earlier years, I did budgeting software consultancy for dealerships. And so the things, let's say if you're a bit of a larger dealer group, what you usually have is some sort of system where you can input budgets and forecasts, but not forecasts in the sense that you see here, more in line with financial forecasts that, let's say, your controllers would input. Those are the kinds of things that you do. So you have templates where you get distributed inputs from different, let's say, rooftops or locations, and then you aggregate them to a top-line dealer view. So those can be, and the business then decides what they're looking to budget. That would be also on the variable ops side. So if they have a forecast of how many cars they're going to sell and so on. So I don't know if that answers Gene's question, but the experience that I have is from these types of systems where you have a dedicated system for budgeting, because reporting is one thing. It takes existing data that is in DMS or other systems, but budgeting at a sort of granular level where you're asking the people responsible for driving revenue to input figures is another. So long-winded answer. I don't think it really answered Gene's question, but if someone else has an example, I think there's time to discuss.
Well, it answers it in one perspective, in that it tells me how you take data and will individualize it for a particular type of dealer. And that's kind of what I was looking for, was what are the ways, I mean, even somebody here came into a dealership and turned it to a different direction in terms of your approach. Let me kind of give you a setup. Ted and I will be talking about our Japan trip from years ago. And I met with, when I was writing the Mazda Professional Selling Skills, I met with Kenji, who was kind of the head guy at Mazda in Hiroshima. And one of the things that I noted about his data was he wasn't looking for much. And so I said, hey, you're not looking for much data. He goes, that's because the only thing I'm worried about right now is filling the bucket with money. Once we get it full of money, then I can decide how to measure it. So that's kind of the questions is what are some of the different scenarios?
Yeah, you have to pick something, right? You have to pick the important parts. It's very true. And so the other link I'll have in the material is for a sort of how do you get started with KPIs, and sort of, okay, you do have a lot of KPIs in the service department, but if you sort of try to exercise some sort of amnesia and forget about them for a minute and just think, like, what are the important KPIs, and look at the actuals, but also look at the goals and the plan data that you need to see. And so one of the professors or one of my professors said that budgeting is kind of like being lost in the forest. If you always go and change your budget, it's like you'll stay lost forever. You need to have a fixed point and then just move in that direction, and not just jump all around the place. So yeah.
So Henrik, I think the biggest value on the data would lie not so much on the numbers, but more on the customer data. I think, you know, we often rush to the number side and try to slice them up, but at the end of the day, we need to figure out the data on our customers, what they're doing, what they're spending, when are they coming in, things of that nature. And then we can dive into the numbers afterwards. But if we don't know what our customers are doing, the numbers are kind of irrelevant at this point, in my opinion.
That's very good.
I've got a
And yeah.
Yep. Someone have a
This
question?
report, that's me. This report, is this customizable where you can add custom layers?
Yeah, so this is a good point, Paul. So what you get is when you have a sort of a data warehouse, you can build any report you want and add any visual you want. You're not restricted because you have the fine grain to do whatever you want. Basically, it's your data. So you can add new visuals, you can add new data, and on the field side here on the right hand side, I've only added certain dimensions. So if we look at this PowerPoint again, you can have a lot of other dimensions as well, and you can have dimensions that aren't showing here. And returning to Mike's point, the data is important, but for a lot of businesses, actually most businesses, what really matters is the customer, because without the customer there is no business. So one movement would be to say that, okay, let's use the customer as an integrator for all of the data. So you sort of reorient everything on the customer, and you start to you build your integrations and you do your calculations based on what customers are spending and when are they coming in, and what kind of segments are they, and how can we sort of find patterns from our customer interactions. And
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
I think one very important addition to this report, which would happen even before we gather the customer data, is by looking historically at what we've spent on marketing and what that marketing spend turns into from a standpoint of you know, your own customers coming back in, responding to those offers, and at the same time how you're penetrating your market on a conquest side. Because if you know what you've done marketing wise and what the result has been to bring in customers historically, then your model with predictive analytics should be able to then forecast for you, all other things being equal, if you do X, you should anticipate a result of Y. And then you can track the customer data more effectively. I think that's a more comprehensive plan on putting together your whole package.
That's very true, and so the services marketing side would look at that, and I think, you know, that may be seen as a bit of a critique in looking at this sort of the ops side separately, because the ops is actually the customer analytics. So yeah, it's a good point. So here, Paul, is another. So I don't have a lot of data to show. I should probably mock up some demo data for you to see, but you can add
Henrik?
sort of
Henrik.
visuals and reports to your heart's content. So
Henrik, hold on one sec. John, do you have something to add?
Well, going back to what Mike was saying a minute ago, you know, about tracking what and using these reports to track what our customers are doing. We've talked a lot about how is it affected after holidays, how is our business affected during these times of the season. The one variable that we have in this goes back to that compliance side of it. Yes, our customers are coming in these times, but their behavior is really dependent on our service advisors' performance, because, you know, we may not be as busy at this time because service advisors aren't presenting service menus. I can see where why the kiosks are becoming so popular, because we're removing that variable. Now we know the customers are in complete control, and in many of our dealerships, the customers aren't in complete control. So you almost need both sides, being able to measure these behaviors and measure the compliance and put them together before we can really get a good result.
Yeah, and I would hope that as some of this stuff moves along, that's kind of the point that we get to where we can actually, have all that data and find those intersecting points where everything does fit together, and where we can figure out, what is causing that downturn at that time of year, of month, of the day, whatever it may be. Because I think we can all agree it's definitely more than one factor. It's certainly not just that it's back to school time. It's back to school time for the customer and for those advisors. It's, there's a lot of things, and if we can start to compile all this data that we have at our disposal, and we can hopefully start to put some of that stuff together. That's a great point, John. Henrik,
Yeah,
all yours.
yeah, good points all around. And there's no royal road to riches, so you will have to work if you want to go this route where you have a sort of a 360 view of your business. You can't, or let's say if you do have a great setup from your DMS and it covers all of those, but I'm sort of skeptical. I think your DMS will be one source system among others to feed into that view. And I've been flashing some of the reports and dashboards. You can build views into service sales, and you'll have to work with your data guys to get just the reports that you want to see how things are moving along. And one of the takeaways for me from this session is definitely, the customer is really important. We should probably have started from that side, but just because these topics are also, you can discuss demand forecasting and so on separately. It's probably good to have that also included, but definitely very interesting. Let's see here. I don't know whether you guys are so interested in this, but basically, if you look at a typical analytics architecture from the systems perspective, you'll find a lot of graphs out there on the internet that show you boxes and arrows moving back and forth, and I've tried to simplify that somewhat to, okay, so if we take a top view of what kind of what a system might look like, and what the players involved are, you would have something moving from sort of left to right, where you have source systems, and depending on your setup, you will have a DMS. You might have the DMS might include the CRM, it might not. You might have marketing automation, you might have a separate system for appointments and so on. And so to Paul's point, where you have sort of the marketing campaign data and the marketing response data, that may be housed in a separate system and so on. All of those things need to be integrated and included if you want to strive for a 360 view of your customer or of your service department. So okay, you've bought all of these systems, and vendors have convinced you that this functionality is really what you need to drive a certain process, and that's great. Okay, so you have that process there, you're generating data, and now you want to have a larger view. So now what? Well, then you look at the different systems and see, well, how can you integrate these? What are the integration points? So you have things like APIs, so points where you can programmatically pull data out and sometimes even include it in other systems. But for our purposes, those will be sort of data extraction APIs. You have a direct database link which is quite rare, where you have a vendor that allows you to come in and look at the relational database and extract data from there. Or you can have file transfers. So I think, let's say for UCS or Reynolds and Reynolds, you will have sort of standard reports that you can integrate. But that's not a desirable point to be in. You'd like to have the most granular data so that you can cut it in specific ways. And okay, so once that's done, you have a process called ETL, so extract, transform, load. You need those kinds of capabilities to move it into a data warehouse or a data mart or data hub structure. And so that's when the cloud players come into the picture. So Microsoft Azure or Amazon AWS or Google Data Store or BigQuery, or then you can have, if you have a large dealership that likes to have it on premise, you can have an on premise sort of server environment, or then you can have certain data on premise and certain data up in the cloud, and that's where you would have your data warehouse located so that you can access it from anywhere. And so once this part is set up, you have an extract, transform, load that loads data, let's say once per day into your data warehouse, or for certain data points, they would load at tighter intervals. So for open repair orders, you might even set it to like 10 or 15 minutes. And of course, if you're doing application system integrations, you could have systems pushing their data into other systems, or systems pulling data out of other systems to integrate functionality into those. And then one benefit of having a data warehouse structure or a data hub is that when you then do sort of data manipulations and you find the patterns and actionable data, you can push that data into other operational systems. So it's not where you have a data hub and then you do reporting from it. You can use it as a sort of an operational data warehouse where you integrate that data that's calculated into, let's say, the CRM or marketing automation, or to drive sort of marketing action and sales action. So let's say for a more sophisticated setup, you could have things like customer churn rates, so attrition rates for customers. Let's say you've calculated how likely it is that someone is about to leave you. You can have a score, customer by customer, that you push to a marketing automation system, and you could also have a forecast of when they're set to leave, and then communicate some sort of value proposition or a retention offer before they leave. So that's something to think about, and something we could perhaps discuss at another.
Yeah, Henrik, I just want to give a time check, because we're at going by your computer 4:02 a.m. So we're usually about an hour on these calls. I don't want to hold people past what they expected to be here. If anyone wants to continue on, I know he's got some more stuff to show us. I'm certainly in to stay on, but I don't want anybody to feel that they're being held up past their family time here. So.
Yeah, and one point I'd like to mention is, please, if you have any questions, let's have a conversation. I'm sorry, I did a lot of talking today, so.
We all did. It's all good. It's all good. I don't mind going by the time. I just don't want to. I don't want to be unfair to somebody who has to move on to go do whatever family things they have to do. So nobody's leaving though, so we're all right.
Okay, so I'll send this material over to you, and I'll just show you a couple of links. So I didn't want to overwhelm you with the links to texts, but this is in context with the presentation I had today. So the first link is a link to how you've come up with KPIs in the organization. Have a look at that website. He has a lot of good books, affordable books that you can use and resources to start mapping out KPIs and why you would want to use those. And the other link is to the forecasting text. That's more involved perhaps, but you can jump around and see if there's something interesting, and then, you know, communicate with me if you have any questions regarding that and how that fits in your data. So that's the presentation. So if you want to have a conversation amongst yourself, if you want to ask questions, let's do that next.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, you and I have talked quite a bit over the last couple of weeks, and I would say that although obviously this is a time-consuming thing. Mike Vogel, thank you for joining us, buddy. Obviously, it's a time-consuming thing to get these things set up. But I think the advantages that these would provide our dealerships are so great that that we have to start diving into this more. And there may be some companies, some systems out there that do this. I know all of our DMSs do at least a portion of this, but I don't think they do it to the detailed level that we would really need to be able to put up a graph like that, where we could look at that, you know, and drop that. If we could drop that over day, month over month, year over year, and start to find a pattern, I think that has some extremely great benefits to our businesses.
Yeah, I think one point I'd like to put across here, it's not so much about the software this time. It's more about, you know, building capabilities based off of your business requirements. So with a large dealer group I worked with at a past employer here in Finland, their sort of major headache was customer retention. So they'd invested a lot in their service facilities. There were also a car importers, so they had a network of internal and external dealerships, and so they'd invested a lot in their network of service departments. And then their issue was, well, hey, wait a minute, where are all our customers? We had to do something. We had to call in the cavalry, so to speak, and look at, okay, so what's causing churn in this instance, and what can we do about it? And of course, they'd invested a lot in marketing automation capabilities and so on. So they had the systems in place. They just needed the data, the forecasts, and the actionable stuff to do something about it and integrate it into a process. So it's definitely something to look at. I'm just looking at the chat if there's something.
Just a. Like,
so I have a question for you. How many of you have something, some sort of data hub or data warehouse in addition to your DMS, or do you sort of rely on your DMS to give you the reporting that you need?
For me, that's only my DMS. That's all I have available.
Hey, Dave, do you mind if I ask you a quick question?
What was that, Paul?
I'm going to guess that's probably most dealership situations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you see any benefits after this long talk that I had? Do you see any benefit to having something in addition to the DMS where you have data and you have knowledge stored. One obvious point would be that you sort of, when you have data stored somewhere else as well, you have a bit more agility. Let's say you don't have so much of a vendor lock-in because you have the data, it's your data, and you can switch systems if you need to. That's one benefit also to having this, if it's not obvious.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a great benefit of having an additional system other than just our DMS. And I think at this point, it's trying to find a way to get a road there until our dealerships are willing to come to the realization that that we have information that's available to us that could make a lot more money and make happier customers.
That's a really good point, Henrik, about the data in another source, because when I see a trend of people moving away from the big two, and they're being sold on the big sell is, oh, you're not using all of the stuff in your current DMS that you're paying a lot of money for, so you should come over to us, and then you're going to spend more in line of what you're using. The danger that a lot of stores don't seem to realize is that when you come off of Reynolds or CDK, there are many more data points or fields that some of the smaller DMS companies don't have. And when you switch over from one DMS to another, and those fields aren't populatable, there's a certain percentage of your data that's gone, and it's gone for good. That's not shit you're going to get back. That's just gone. I've seen situations where people have purchased cars, and the entire history of that person's purchasing a car is now gone. Even when they think that, well, let me just go back to the one of the big two, that data's gone, and it's gone for good. And in the fixed side of things, where it becomes more important to us, is that you lose historical data and you lose stocking data, things like that, you're screwed, because the typical store's got about, what, 300 grand tied up in frozen capital for your inventory. And if you don't have the right data to make those decisions and predictions on what you should stock, going into next season, that's a big problem, And we haven't even touched on obsolescence here. It's another nightmare. Take obsolescence for 500, Alex.
Hey, Dave.
Yes.
Hey, quick question. I've been most of my career been with CDK, and my recent employer now, they're on the Adams system. And does anybody have experience? It seems like they're so far behind times. I don't know. To me, it's not a very good system. Now, I just wonder, is anybody in the group, are they on the Adams system?
I am not personally familiar with that. Paul or David Miller have any experience with one of those?
So I've probably been in well over 1,000 stores. I could probably count the number of stores that use Adam on. I might need more than one hand.
Yeah, I'm scared. That's what I was scared you'd say.
It's typically described as kind of the subcompact version, I guess I would say.
Right.
I'm a little out of date on what language it's written in and whether it's even contemporary. It was the last time I really had an in-depth discussion about it, which was probably 5 or 8 years ago, because it just hasn't come up. It was a lot of manual entry, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. I actually believe at the time, and I'm just using this as an example, they didn't have a field for an email address. So
well, they have that now, but I mean, I feel like I went backwards 20 years.
So,
I'm going to put it in perspective. Do you remember the X-Body GM cars?
Yeah.
Whatever you're driving now, trade that in on an X-Body, and that should pretty much
Yeah, yeah, that's what I figured. I appreciate it, guys.
It's price. It's only price.
Okay.
Right. All right.
I just want to throw in one comment, Dave, if I may.
Go ahead, David. Absolutely.
And I think, just listening to the presentation, it just stimulated a little bit of thinking. And one analogy that I've found to be accurate, at least in my own terms, is that in all of these systems, whether it's your DMS or a third party that you've got a dashboard on, or even your own computer, it can do a hell of a lot more things than we ever get to. And I know that when I get a new laptop, I might learn 2 or 3 new kind of whiz bang things, and then, I got stuff to do. So I don't typically get back to the layer upon layer upon layer of stuff that's in there. And I think that there's a lot available in these various systems. I don't think any system has everything. And sometimes it's just putting aside, like 2 hours a month to just learn a little bit more about one thing, or have a rep or a good vendor who can walk you through or create a roadmap for you. But, I could pontificate a little bit more, but there's a lot available in these systems that most of us never get to, myself included.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great point.
All right, that is I think gonna call it a night. Again, a great discussion. Henrik, I thank you again for getting yourself up at this god awful hour for you.
You need to get out of the dealership.
We are grateful to you for doing that for us, and hopefully we can make this work a little further and dig in a little deeper and get you back here when we do the marketing side of things also, where certainly I think that's what Mike Vogel, who already had to go, was kind of getting back to with it's got to be about the customer, and obviously no customer, no money. So that's the way it goes. Typically we end the meeting with setting some goals, but we're over time. So I think for this meeting, we will skip the goal setting portion. If anybody wants to send me a DM with their goals, we will certainly revisit those when we come back in 2 weeks, as we are here to hold each other accountable for setting and reaching the goals. And it can be a short-term goal, long-term goal for the new folks. Mr. Harris, thank you, sir. Have a good night. Short-term goals, long-term goals, whatever it is, obviously take your goal and multiply it by 10 and make that goal. We all shortchange what we overestimate what we can do in a year and underestimate what we can do in 5 years. So we're all here to support each other and make each other better. I think we're already getting there. Thank you, Paul. I think we're already getting there with this group. I'm pretty proud to be part of this, and I will call this a night. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
All right, and I'll see everybody in 2
Thank
weeks.
you.
Take care,
See
everybody.
you next week, brother.
Yes, I'll see anybody who's coming to LA for the roundtable. I will see you in LA in a week. And anybody who is not, I don't know if Benny's still here. Anybody who hasn't checked out Benny's video needs to go and check out Benny's video that he put up today with the Woodstock pick stops. Absolutely hilarious. All right, everybody have a great night.
Good night.
Have a great night, guys.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.